and especially on such a beautiful day to be, out and about. And I want to say thank you to all of those here at the county, our DA, my partner, if you will, up in Albany, Assemblyman. Excuse me, Assemblywoman. I got stuck on the Assemblyman there, Assemblywoman Aileen. We are in some interesting times, as I'm sure you're aware, up in Albany. And I think both of us are hoping that this week will be a week of movement afoot, if you will, for our budget. But as today was number one, very important, and I also would like to say thank you to Sheriff Schiff for the courtesies that he's extended me with the ability to go to his facility and to tour it, to talk to law enforcement at the ground level, and to get their very valuable input. And I have kind of a prepared statement here that I would like to address to you, and then I'll make some quick introductions, and then we could open it up for any and all questions that you may have, if that's all right. So, protecting the public is one of the most important responsibilities of government. When a crime has been committed, the victim, not the criminal, must be our first concern. For more inexplicable reasons, those in charge in Albany have forgotten the very basic standard. The so-called bail reforms have allowed dangerous criminals out on our streets and made it more difficult for the police officers and district attorneys to do their jobs. Criminals know that here in New York State, the law is in their favor, and that has to change immediately. Since bail reform was enacted, thousands of individuals have been arrested, released, and re-arrested on violent charges. And it's time to slam shut the revolving door for criminals. One of the first bills that I sponsored upon my election to the state senate was a measure to repeal the disastrous bail policies. And to date, my colleagues in charge will not even allow a committee vote on my bill. It's flat out wrong, and it needs to change. Now, our state budget is on hold, more than 2 weeks and counting. And one of the main reasons is bail reform. Even the very weak changes offered by the governor are too much for the pro-criminal contingency in the Senate and Assembly majorities. Now, if none of this has resonated, let me give you a prime example of the problems with bail reform that will hit very closely at home. And I would like to thank Jim Steinberg and his wife for being here today. Thank you. Pleasure to meet you in person after our several phone conversations. Is that I'm sure you know his son, Forestburg Assistant Fire Chief William Billy Steinberg, was killed responding to a fire in the town of Thompson at the young age of 37. And this fire was no accident. It was the work of a now convicted arsonist. And when this criminal set that fatal fire, he had already been charged with 2 previous arsons. But he was free, no bail, due to the bail reform laws that many in Albany continue to support, and it's absolutely sickening. There are many crimes exempt from bail, including felony arson, 3rd and 4th degree. And this has to change. I want to thank my former Senator Mike Martucci for authoring legislation, Billy's Law, as we call it, and to make that change. And I am now the prime co-sponsor of a bill working with my neighboring senator, Senator Skoufis, to ensure that if bail reform isn't erased in its entirety, that this vital legislation does make it across the finish line. It is the very least we can do for Billy, his family, and all the firefighters who run towards danger to protect us all. And in closing, let me say thank you to those in law enforcement. I say today, as I traveled around, I don't know how each and every one of you in law enforcement get motivated to go to work. I'm just glad that you do. I truly am. I'd like to thank those in the DA's office and our judges, and then more importantly, all of our first responders. Know that there are many like myself who appreciate the demanding work you do, and who will continue to partner, I will continue to partner with you to ensure the people of New York State are able to walk the streets safely. I think it pretty well sums it up when I read the high points of what we see with the cashless bail. And I'm going to say something else. It's also encouraging to know that I do have a partner here in the Assembly and to work across those political lines. And to see that it isn't always just a D or an R after your name. It's what we do to ensure that you all are represented and taken care of in that fashion. So, with that, I would like to take a moment to introduce, of course, she doesn't need any introduction as your Assemblywoman. But if we could get, Aileen, if you'd like to come on up and say a few words, it would be great. So thank you.
So first of all, a little history on my family. My father, my grandfather, my uncles, my nephew right now all serve in New York State as a police officer in New York City. And I worry about my nephew Declan every day, and so does his mom. It's very, very difficult. And more than anything, I think that this bail reform, as well as the housing, did not really belong in a budget. It's not a budget issue. However, at this point, we all know that we need more that the judges need more leeway to decide whether somebody should be incarcerated or not incarcerated. We are creating many more mental health beds. We know a lot of times these crimes are associated with mental health issues, and I think that it's important to have what we need in our communities, and I'm fighting very hard for that. We did put $1 billion this year in the mental health budget because we know that it's rampant. And when we hear about children with anxiety, etc., that we must have the resources necessary. So at this point, I know that I feel that it should be taken out of the budget, and if it stays in the budget, that Kathy Hochul did do a little work on it. But I think that the most important thing you can do when you create legislation, any legislation, is go down and dirty to the people that are in that field, to talk to the police officers, not only in New York City, but in upstate New York, and ask them what they think will help stop this crime rage that is happening all across New York State. And I think that that input is very important. And sometimes people write legislation and they don't ask the people that walk the streets. So I think that's very important. And at this point, I think it should be taken out of the budget, first and foremost, or if not, we need to get insight from the people that are on the streets working with people in every community. So I think that's important. So as far as bail reform goes, I voted against it. I feel that it is necessary in many ways. I also think that the psychiatric beds are very important, so that when a police officer recognizes that there's a mental health issue, there's some place that they can bring this person to. And right now we just don't have it, so we need to change that.
Come on.
Everybody knows.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank everybody for coming here today. I want to give a special thanks to our Senator Oberacker, as well as a special thanks to our Congresswoman Aileen Gunther.
Thank you for the I'll take the congressional salary.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, on January 1st of 2020, there was a colossal shift in New York State criminal law. A major force in that shift was the implementation of the Bail Elimination Act, or more colloquially known as the bail reform. Before that date, a judge was empowered to consider setting monetary bail in any criminal case. Under the new statute, however, a judge's authority to set monetary bail was significantly curtailed. I've practiced under the prior bail laws, and I've also practiced under the new bail reform. I've seen the stark difference in their application and their effects. I am as concerned as anyone that bail is not used to punish those accused of crimes before they are found guilty. However, I am equally concerned with public safety. And in my experience, as a prosecutor who has seen firsthand the effects of the Bail Elimination Act, I can confidently say that it makes us less safe. Under the new law, courts are powerless to set bail in a vast array of cases that we care about. Now, we cannot set monetary bail on certain robberies, certain burglaries, on drug dealers, on certain arsons, certain vehicular assaults, most failure to register as a sex offender cases, and essentially all misdemeanor offenses. Once out, many of these defendants reoffend and/or fail to reappear in court. This new catch and release system has created a revolving door criminal justice system. Over the past 3 years, I've received a great many phone calls from our partners in law enforcement about when it is feasible to set monetary bail in a particular case. These cases have ranged from the mundane to the heinous to the depraved. As the acting district attorney of Sullivan County, I am charged with prosecuting the law that is on the books. And in many instances, these laws are at odds with common sense. As a result, a majority of my responses to law enforcement was that we are required to release the accused on his or her own recognizance without any conditions. I once received a call where a defendant was apprehended after a high-speed chase in which the defendant had nearly twice the legal blood alcohol content limit, had crashed his vehicle, resulting in serious physical injury to a 16-year-old male that would be flown to Westchester for treatment. The Bail Elimination Act ordered me to consent to his release on his own recognizance. I received another call where a defendant who had 6 arrest warrants in 6 different courts in this county was apprehended after a long investigation into his whereabouts. The Bail Elimination Act ordered me to consent to his release as well. These are only 2 of the phone calls that I've received on a daily basis for the past 3 years. The Bail Elimination Act, which was passed without consultation from any district attorney office or any other prosecutorial organization, was flawed from the outset. This is buttressed from the passage of the 2021 amendments that permitted judges to set bail for crimes that have caused the death of another and for the kingpin drug dealer statute, among others. And this was further reinforced from the passage of the 2022 amendments that permit a judge to set bail for domestic violence crimes and bail jumping charges, among other offenses. And it is now my hope that in 2023, our state legislature will pass common sense bail laws that will protect the public. So while I recognize there is abuse of the system elsewhere, I know that with more discretion and with more authority, we can do a better job to keep everybody safe. So I want to again thank Senator Oberacker and Assemblywoman Aileen Gunther for being here today so they can report our concerns back to our friends in Albany. Thank you.
I think you see a consensus that needs to be communicated here in Albany. You know, one of the interesting parts about being now a second-term senator is that sometimes in Albany we don't want to admit when something isn't working. We don't want to admit that maybe we fell short of expectation. And being a businessman, one of the things that we do and look at is we debrief on a project. We look at, did we meet, in our term, we use the term signpost. Did we hit the signpost that we were intended to meet, okay? Debrief on it. And if we find out we haven't done that, then it's time to step back, retool, and then re-proceed down that road. And the one thing we don't do in Albany is that. We are so sometimes engulfed in a piece of legislation or a project to admit that sometimes noble in intent, I would say probably, and it was structured that way, but it definitely, I think we all agree, it's fallen short of expectation. So I think one of the things moving forward for us is to continue to communicate that to not only the governor, but to the majority leaders in both of our houses, and to get reform, to get information from our DAs, from our judges, from our law enforcement, for those that hold the very valuable pieces of information that we require to be an effective legislator.